you now to close your eyes, to become calm and peaceful, to shed the cares of the day and the concerns of the week, to just let go of all those thoughts that seem to rush in our minds, and feel yourself sitting in your seat, the chair supporting you. And even with your eyes closed, you know that there are other people around you. Feel the presence of those others. And as I snap my fingers, everyone disappears from this room but you. And you are alone in this room. When I snap my fingers again, the room disappears. You are alone in a field. And as I snap my fingers again, the earth disappears. You are in space. And when I snap them again, the sun disappears. And the moon disappears. And you are in the whole universe. The stars are in, around, and through you. And you are one with all that is. There is nothing but you in the universe. And the universe is you. One. Rest for a moment in silence, knowing that oneness. And as you bring your attention back to this room, back to this place, bring with you that peace and that understanding that you are one with all that is. And for that we say, thank you, God. Amen. A group of scientists were building a supercomputer, the most powerful computer ever built. It had more than 1 zillion gigabytes of memory. And when they finished it, they began to program it with all the knowledge from all the experience of all the people who have ever lived on Earth. And that machine knew everything that there was to know. And then they asked it the ultimate question: is there a God? And the computer said, there is now. We all say, yes, there's a God. And we say we believe in God. But truly, we are asking the question inside our souls, is there really a God? And what is God's will for me? And what am I doing on this planet anyway? Why am I here? And why do things seem so difficult to accomplish? There was a man who woke up one morning sleeping on his waterbed, and he noticed that he was sleeping in a puddle of water. So he took his waterbed out of the frame and sort of rolled it, mushed it outside to the backyard, and he filled it up real tight with water so he could find out where the leak was. And that thing began to slosh, and there was a little hill in his backyard, and it began to roll down the hill. He chased it, trying to stop it, but it was too big and too heavy. It just rolled away into a whole big thorn tree, and hundreds of holes were poked, ruined that waterbed mattress. Well, he gave up on water beds. He took the frame down, went out and got himself a standard bed, and he went to sleep that night. And the next morning, he woke up in a puddle again. And when he looked up on the ceiling, he saw that the bathroom above his bedroom was leaking. And that was the cause of the water. Does that sound anything like your life? Have you had experiences like that? Has that kind of thing happened to you? Are you doing the right thing? Do you ask the question, am I doing the right thing? Do I know what I'm supposed to be doing? Does each choice that I make have a good outcome? There was one fellow who was standing at the pearly gates ready to come in. And St. Peter greeted him and he said, now before you can come in, you must tell me at least one good deed that you did while you were on earth. Well, the man thought for a while. He said, well, there was that time when that great big huge biker was beating up this old lady, and I stepped between them and I gave that biker a kick in the shins and a sock in the jaw and then a knee in the stomach. And then I said to the old lady, run for help. And St. Peter said, that's amazing. And just when did this happen? He said, oh, about 2 minutes ago. Did he make the right choice? Are we doing the right thing now? Are we making right choices? Do we have the right answers? Are our questions getting us the right answers, the things that we're looking for? One man was flying from New York to the northern peninsula of Michigan, and he had to go through Chicago airport and then take a small plane up to Michigan. And he got off his nice 747 comfortable plane and went through the airport and got to the gate where his other plane would be, and he looked out the window, and this was this little puddle jumper plane. And he said to the stewardess who was standing at the gate, will I have a window seat or an aisle seat? And she said, both. Are your questions being answered that way? Are we finding out what is really true in our life? Do we know what we're really doing here? Are we searching, and are our questions getting answered, or are our questions just getting more questions? There was a minister who prayed what I call the minister's prayer. I think every minister would pray this prayer one time or another. He said this, and Father, I ask thee now for good text to accompany this fantastic joke. I've done that. In fact, I did that one time. I heard a joke, and I thought, wow. And I wrote a story about that joke, and I want to share that story with you today. Once, not long ago, 5 men went searching for treasure. They had heard that there was a wonderful treasure someplace in the jungles in the foothills of the Himalayas. They didn't know exactly where it was, but they knew it was a very valuable treasure. It was called the Tiger's Treasure. They knew that anybody who found it would be wealthy and have all that they wanted for the rest of their lives. So these 5 men were searching for that treasure in the jungle. And one night when they were camped, a terrible rain came. A tremendous monsoon rain came and a flash flood. And it washed through their camp and washed them all away, separating each man and stranding them alone in the jungle. Each one to fend for himself. Now the first man was not the kind of a person that you would expect to be on a safari, not the kind of a person who you'd expect to go out and be an adventurous person, because he was a very careful person. He was a very methodical person. He was the kind of person that calculated everything before he did anything. He was so cautious and so careful that if he was going to the store down the street, before he'd get in his car, he'd look out the window to make sure the lights would all be green when he got to them. He was fastidious. And safety and security was the big thing in his life. And no one knows how he got talked into this trip. In fact, at this particular moment, standing there in the jungle alone, he didn't know how he got there. And then he heard it, a sound he recognized immediately. It was the roar of a tiger. He looked in the bushes, he saw the tiger, and he began to run. He ran up a hill and onto a bluff, to a cliff. And as he looked down the cliff, he saw that it was the 1,000-foot drop. And he turned the other way and he saw the tiger coming to him one step at a time, licking his chops. And he began to back up from the tiger. And as he backed up, he came closer and closer to that cliff. And then he slipped and he fell. And he grabbed wildly as he was going down and grabbed onto a branch that was sticking out of the side of the bluff, about 6 feet below. He looked down and he saw a 1,000-foot drop. He looked up and he saw the tiger licking his chops. And he thought, oh, what a terrible place to be. And then the thought came to him, maybe I could pray. So he said this prayer. He said out loud, God, if there is a God up there, tell me what to do. There was a clap of thunder, and the clouds parted, and the voice said, let go of the branch. There was silence. The man looked up and said, is there anybody else up there? Now this man was tenacious. This man hung on that branch, and he hung and he hung. He was scared. He looked at the tiger, he looked down, but he just hung in there for hour after hour. And finally that tiger just got tired of waiting, and he left. But the man hung there for hours more because he wasn't sure that tiger was gone. But finally he was able to pull himself up on the branch and get up on the cliff, and he went home, left the jungle and went home. And when he got home, he would tell everybody about the terrible thing that had happened to him. The story, he would say, look, don't go out searching for treasure. Don't go out looking for things. Stay home where it's safe. Don't venture out. It is an unsafe world. And my story will prove it. He would tell the story over and over again until people got tired of hearing it. Well, meanwhile, back in the jungle, our second man, who was also lost and also alone, also heard the tiger. And he ran up onto a bluff, and he dropped over, and he grabbed the branch, just as the first. But this man was a totally different person. He was a nice guy. He loved people. He wanted everybody to love him. He was the kind of person that would give you the shirt off his back. He was a good person. He did everything right. He just wanted people to like him. Even though he always did nice things for people, people didn't always do nice things for him. But he was convinced if he was nice enough, if people would like him enough, that everything would be all right in his life. And there he was, hanging from that branch with a tiger above and a 1,000-foot drop below. And he said, this is not fair. I've been a good person all my life. How can this be happening to me? Then he thought about praying, and he prayed. And he got the same answer to let go. And he said, not on your life. And then he began to scream. He knew somebody would help him, so he began to say, help, help. And he hollered. And before you know it, some hunters heard him. And they came. They saw his predicament. They saw the tiger. They fired their guns and chased the tiger away and rescued him and brought him home. And he told all of his friends, you know, the key to life is doing nice things for other people. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what you accomplish in life. Just being nice is what's important. If you're nice enough to people, they'll always be nice to you. Even though that wasn't proven in his life, he believed that. Well, then our third individual, who was still a different person than the other, he had the same experience. He was chased over the cliff. He was hanging. But he was a different individual. He was a rugged individualist. He was the kind of person that got things done. He was the kind of a person who believed in the golden rule, he who has the gold rule. If you want something done right, he would always say, do it yourself. Nobody can do it as good as I can. And he had a list of achievements to prove that he was right. He was an achiever. He was a mover and shaker. He was a guy who got stuff done. And he was in the same fix. And when the voice said, let go, he said, not me, fella. He looked up at that tiger. He broke off a piece of that branch. He jumped up on the top of the cliff and began to go at it with the tiger. And he won. Now, he did get a very large claw mark across his face. But that didn't bother him a bit, because when he went home, he told the story of his victory over the tiger, and that this is a life that the only way you get anything is to do it yourself, and you've got to go straight forward for your goals, and you've got to get them, bar anybody else getting in your way. Makes no difference. What's important is doing it yourself. Well, now our fourth individual, who's also stranded, was yet another kind of a person. He was a searcher. He was a man who read many books. He went to many seminars. I am sure he was in Unity. He was a person always looking for the answers. Was there a God? Was there a universe? What are we doing here? And he too was chased over the cliff, and he too was hanging there and asked the question and heard the answer, let go of the branch. But he thought, I've always believed there was a God, but I wasn't quite sure. Here's my chance to find out. And he let go. And he dropped, but only a few feet, onto a ledge that was not visible from above. And there he was, on the ledge. He said, it's a miracle. God has saved my life. I have prayed. I've got an answer. There really is a God. And then he thought, well, how am I going to get up? It's too high for me to climb up. And looking down, it was too far to drop off. I can't pray again. I've already disturbed God once today. I don't want to do that again. So he began to look at the side of the bluff, and he noticed that there was an opening about large enough for a person to go through. So he climbed in. And as he climbed in, he sort of tripped and sprained his ankle, but he realized he was in a cave. He began to grope his way through the dark in the cave, stumbling and skinning his knee and skinning his arm, and getting kind of battered, crawling through this pitch dark cave. And finally, up in the distance, he saw a little light, and he began to crawl towards the light. And when he got to the light, it was an opening. And when he got out, he found his way back to civilization. And he told all of his friends the story of his adventure. He said, there is a God. And he would tell them how he was hanging from the branch and he'd obeyed his guidance and he dropped onto this ledge. And all of his friends said, it was just a coincidence. That ledge was there all along. It's just a coincidence. Don't tell me that stuff. Now, the fifth and final individual had the same experience as the other four. He too had been stranded, and he too had been chased over the cliff and was hanging. When the voice said, let go, he said, of course, and let go, and dropped onto the ledge. But then he did something different. He said, thank you. Thank you for your guidance. And I know that since you've guided me this far, you will guide me every step of the way. And the voice said to him, there's an opening in the side of the bluff. Go in feet first, or otherwise you will sprain your ankle. So he went in feet first, and he didn't sprain his ankle. And when he's in the cave, he again gave thanks and said, I know I will be guided each step of the way. And each step of the way he was guided, and he thanked the God of his spirit each time until he found his way to the opening of the cave, unhurt, unscratched, unmarked. And he stopped there to give thanks. And looking down at the ground, he noticed something in the sand, something sticking out of the sand, a little, what looked like a corner of a box, and he began to brush the sand away and dig this out, and sure enough, it was a box of treasure. It was the tiger's treasure that they'd all been searching for. So he took that treasure home, and he cashed it in, and he did wonderful things for his community, had plenty of money for himself, but he never told anybody about the money, and he never told anybody about his adventure. He said not a word. But every so often, people would notice that this man seemed to understand life, that he seemed to have everything together. He was a friendly person, yet he could be alone. He was the kind of a person that didn't run around giving advice, but when you asked for his advice, it was good. He had something special that people saw. And every so often, someone would come to him and say, how is it that you seem to understand life so well? And he would say this, once in a place far away, not very long ago, 5 men went searching for treasure. Did you recognize any of your friends in that story? Did maybe you recognize yourself in that story? Were you the person who's always concerned about your safety, your security, and that everything is the way it's supposed to be? Were you the person who's always interested in what other people are doing and being involved with other people to the exclusion of everything else in your life? Or are you the person who esteem is so important to you that you have to prove yourself over and over again through your achievements? Or are you that searcher, maybe we have a lot of them here today, looking for the answers, seeking to find what the truth is? Or are you that fifth person, the self-actualized person who seems to live from something within himself? Or maybe you would like to be that person. You see, those aren't 5 different kinds of people. Those are just 5 different ways of looking at life. And you've got a choice of looking at life the way you want to. You can be any of those people or all of those people depending on the choices that you are willing to make. Each is a different experience of life, and it is based on the choices that you make day to day. And the key to understanding these choices and what it is that creates our life is found in the book of Luke, in the 19th chapter. Jesus told this parable, which bothers some people because we look at the wrong end of the story to get the point. Here's the parable. A nobleman went to a distant country to get royal power for himself and then return. He summoned 10 of his servants and gave them 10 pounds, 1 pound each, and said to them, "Do business with these until I come back." And when he returned, having received his royal power, he ordered the servants to whom he had given the money to be summoned, that he may find out what they had gained by their trading. The first came and said, "Lord, your pound has made 10 pounds. He said to him, "Well done, good servant. Because you have been trustworthy in very small things, you take charge of 10 cities." Then the second came, saying, "Lord, your pound has made 5 pounds. And he said to him, "You are to rule 5 cities." Then the other came, saying, "Lord, here is your pound. I wrapped it in a piece of cloth, for I was afraid of you, because you are a harsh man, and you take what you do not deposit, and you reap what you do not sow." The master said to him, "I will judge you by your own words, you wicked servant. You knew, did you, that I was a harsh man? Then why did you not put my money into the bank? Then when I returned, I could have collected interest on it." The master said to the bystanders, "Take the pound from him and give it to the one who has 10. I tell you, to those who have, more will be given, but to those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away." When we look at that story, it looks very unfair. That the person who just preserved was roundly chastised, and the person who took it upon himself to expand was congratulated and given more. It sounds so unfair. We want to identify with the person at the end of the story instead of identifying with the person at the beginning of the story. You see, the point of that story is this. It's in the key words, "You were trustworthy with small things, and I will give you 10 cities." If you are trustworthy with a pound, you'll get a city. If you're trustworthy with 5 pounds, you'll get 5 cities. If you're trustworthy with 10 pounds, you'll get 10 cities. The key to our life is not all the big things, and it's the little things. It's the things that are immediately in front of us. It is the small things that count. A huge bathtub can hold lots of water, but what good is it without a plug? It is those things that we do that are right in front of our face. It is that word we say. It is that thought we think. It is that act that we do right now that creates our entire life as we move through it. One vote gave Oliver Cromwell control of England in 1656. We Americans would be speaking German, except for the fact that the vote in 1776 won by 1 vote that we speak English. France was changed from a monarchy to a republic by 1 vote. Rutherford B. Hayes was elected in 1876 by 1 vote, and Adolf Hitler took leadership of the Nazi Party in 1923 by 1 vote. It is that one vote can change the world, and one thought, one act, one deed can change your world, one at a time. The one that is in front of you, not the rest. There was a laboratory that did analysis of certain chemicals. They had ordered a very huge machine that cost a lot of money. It was over $250,000 for this one analyzing machine. And when they got it, they plugged it into the electricity, they hooked it up to the water, and they turned it on, and it did not work. And they tried everything to make it work, and finally they read the directions, and the directions said that you had to put 4 little Pinlight batteries in one part of the machine in order to make it work. And when they put those Pinlight batteries in, this huge machine with all its power began to work. You have been given this hugest machine, the most powerful thing in the world. You have been given a life to use any way you want. You have the entire force of life itself behind that life you have. But you've got to put those 4 little Pinlight batteries in. And those batteries are your attitude about what's in front of you. They are the thoughts, they are the words, they are the choices that you are making right now. That attitude determines what your life is and will be. Down in Florida, there was a man observing 2 older gentlemen playing tennis. Now, these men were both old enough to be drawing Social Security, and he watched them play their game. They were fast, they were furious, they were really moving that ball, just like 20-year-old men. And when they got through, the man went up to one of them. He said, "Excuse me, sir, but you guys were playing a rough game. You look like you're kind of senior citizens." He said, "Yeah, I'm 65, and that's my father. He's 85. He said, 85, he plays tennis like that? And said, "Well, yes, but that's nothing. You should see my grandfather. He's 105. He can take the 2 of us on at once and beat us both." Well, the man said, "Well, where's your grandfather today?" "Well," he said, "he's off getting married." And said, 105 years old? What would make a 105-year-old man want to get married? And I said, "Who said he wanted to get married?" He had the right attitude. He looked at life the right way. Life is not about finding answers. Life is the answer. In all your searching, you will never find God, because God is not lost, nor has God lost you. You may live in the delusion that you're lost, and you'll take the consequences of that delusion. That's totally up to you. In all your searching, you will never find God's will for you. God does not have a will because He's never going to die. He doesn't need one. Just tried that one out, folks. God's will for you is to express who you are. You don't have to remind God to be on your side, because God is. You cannot change anything at all about yourself. You can only change what you express. All of life has the purpose of being. And our physical life here today has the purpose of being and doing. The purpose of your life is to discover who you are, not by searching, but by expressing it. The treasure of life does not come from finding it. The treasure of life comes from expressing it. And I truly love your expression.